Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Dunn Acevedo, and I am Steppenwolf Theater Company Senior Manager of Education Programs. I'm so excited that you're here to join us for part 2 of our Maker May workshop with Samantha Irby and Ian Belknap. I also use she, her pronouns, which is in my title under my name. Just so you know, today we're joined by a couple other folks that you can't see. At the bottom of your screen, there's a closed caption box, CC. If you'd like that service, you can click on that icon, and Jessica Spriggs of ACS, Alternative Communication Services, will be providing captions for today's workshop. And also John Rooney, who is Steppenwolf's Education and Leadership Programs Coordinator, is hidden, but is going to be making all the tech magic happen. And if there's a glitch, which there might be, John will jump in for me as well. Just to quickly recap, on Tuesday, for some of the folks that weren't with us, I facilitated a discussion with Sam and Ian about how they know each other, about their writing practice and process. And if that's something that you're interested in watching, we'll throw a link up there in a little bit because it's available on Steppenwolf's live stream. John, let's move to the land acknowledgement slide. So at Steppenwolf Education, we start all of our workshops with a land acknowledgement. You can see that here on the screen, and in the chat, John threw a link that if you want to know more about the land you reside on currently and the history of that land, that link is a great resource for that. You can go to the next slide, John. This next slide will have Steppenwolf Education's mission statement on it. And I just wanted to let people know that we're excited to be hosting these Maker May programs for a multi-generational audience. That includes our teens, our educators, our artist educators, early career professionals, our Steppenwolf members, and then the wider community. It's something that we're really excited to do completely free. If you're somebody that does want to support this work now or in the future, John will throw a link in the chat where you can find out more information on how to do that. And so I want to reintroduce Ian Belknap and Sam Irby, who are here today. Thank you so much for not only designing the workshops alongside me and coming up with that Maker Challenge, but for all of your time today. And I have thrown your bios in the chat, or John did that. So if you weren't here with us, you can get all that information in the chat. I'm wondering, yeah, you can say hi. I unmuted you. I'm wondering if the two of you would feel comfortable giving a quick review of the Maker Challenge that we issued. John will throw it up on the screen, as well as put a link in the chat. If you're somebody that's like, oh no, I don't know what the Maker Challenge is, you can go to that link and you'll have access to the full challenge. But yeah, John, do you want to throw up that slide, and Sam and Ian, you can just speak to what we were hoping people would do today.
Yeah, so I think the
Go
goal
ahead.
was just write a paragraph that is highly detailed and closely observed, and the challenge had sort of some stuff to do when you get to the revising, some strategies to suggest. We recognize that like 2 days is not a long time, even though a paragraph is not long. It's, you know, something you devote hopefully some thought to. So anything else? Any other?
No, we just wanted it to be not boring and short.
Yes, not boring and short were imperative. So you can take this down for a minute, John. I'm curious for Sam and Ian, since they did the Maker Challenge alongside of us, how did it feel? Like, did this feel kind of like a piece of cake for the two of you, or what did you feel like sort of doing this assignment?
I wrote mine last night because I forgot. Right before I went to bed, I was like, oh, there's one more thing I had to do. And it felt, I mean, it felt easy because, as you'll hear, I have a very specific thing that I missed, so it was easy to talk about it.
Yeah. Ian?
I mean, I think I have a pretty wide stripe of what is it called? Opposition disorder. So even if I issue the assignment to myself, I still have reluctance. I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to do this. Like it's, and the other thing too that I noticed was that I was trying to describe a kind of non-visible internal experience thing, which was weird for this. So I think if we were giving grades, I would be in trouble.
That's amazing. And this feels so on point with where you were at on Tuesday's session, sort of talking about procrastinating, but also like if you have a deadline, you know that you're gonna kind of get it in. But also it's interesting that you say that about grades. The way that we're gonna kind of give feedback today doesn't really, I think, kind of go into that territory, and is more about, like you said, it's only 48 hours, and I would assume a lot of folks out there would want to like keep developing this if that's of interest to them, and revising it. So we'll kind of see where people are at when they're talking to us. Sam, I'm going to have you read your piece first.
Okay.
Since it did come in first.
All right, you know, come on.
I believe when we were talking about this, someone said he was going to get his to you very early. So I'm surprised that mine was first.
Yes, Ian
Well, I was forgetting a crucial part of my own process, which is begin something, have the end of it in sight, collapse into self-loathing, and question every choice I've ever made for a while, and then get resigned to just finishing it off. I was forgetting that middle part.
So just so everybody on the webinar knows, kind of, you know, this is Steppenwolf Education, and so I have asked Sam and Ian to follow a protocol we would follow in our own workshops, which is where the teachers model the work and giving each other feedback, and then invite you into that process. And so whether that's natural to the two of you or not, I'm excited that you said yes to doing that alongside us. And so what we'll do is, I haven't introduced the feedback process, but if you have the Maker Challenge, it's actually in that document on page 2. But Sam is gonna read her piece, then we're gonna just talk about her process of writing it. Ian is gonna kind of model this feedback process. We'll do it again with Ian's piece, and then we will kind of all as a community go through that process together, and we'll see how it goes. And so Sam, do you have anything? I was thinking we'd talk about the piece after you write it, but is there anything you want, or after you read it, but did you want to say anything first?
No, you'll get it immediately.
Awesome. So John, you can throw up Sam's piece, yeah, and so people can follow along while she
There's a
reads it.
typo in it. I should say that. I'm very embarrassed that there's a typo, but other than that, it'll make sense. Okay.
Awesome.
I missed the corn dogs at the Flying J truck stop in Lake Station, Indiana. The Flying J is basically an all-purpose gas station where you can take a shower, but is also a restaurant and most definitely a hub for trafficking of some variety. And I didn't even know a magical wonderland like it even existed until a few years ago when I was regularly driving back and forth between Kalamazoo and Chicago and stumbled upon it while looking for someplace clean with a fully stocked assortment of both vitamin waters and live ammo to pee. It's always teeming with grimy, unwashed truckers grunting racism at you as you squeeze past the freestanding Cinnabon kiosk to get a look at the chafing dishes of congealed barbecued rib goo rapidly decomposing under the heat lamps at the hot bar next to the cigarettes and porn. And if you are lucky, there will be one, but hopefully two, glistening, grease-soaked, golden brown, batter-dipped carcinogen logs rotating on a crisping spit, or whatever they call those rolling curling irons they cook steamed sausages on, manned by delightful women named Brenda or Donna, who always say things like, looking good today, sweetie, even when you are not, in fact, looking good. The corn dogs are 2 for $2 because it's Indiana, for God's sake. And if they have 2 available, you fucking buy 2. They are meant to be consumed alone, without condiments, while softly weeping behind the wheel of the regular person car you were forced to park next to a Bigfoot 4 with both Confederate vanity plates and a baby on board sticker affixed to it. The hot juice from ground chicken lips and cat meat scorching your chin on its path to your shirt. In 2 years, when we are all vaccinated, and I won't have to wedge one through the custom hole cut into my germ-soiled face mask, the Flying J and its precious oily meat sticks will be my first destination.
Thank you so much for that, Sam.
Thank you for letting me write about hot dogs.
Hey, I love hot dogs, so I appreciate it. So yeah, I am curious in terms of like the way we set up this challenge. Did you sort of follow that process for yourself, like brainstorming and revising and reading it out loud, or how did you construct this piece?
Well, I mean, I think a tenet of my work in general is to just try and find the stupidest possible thing. I knew I didn't want to write anything earnest. I didn't want to be like, I miss my sister's laugh, or, I didn't want to do anything like nice. So then I was thinking, like, what dumb fucking thing could I write about that I genuinely feel passionate about? And then, like, the Flying J, I really do love it. It really is the best place on earth, despite being in Indiana. But then I was like, well, it would be dumb to write about the gas station. What is my favorite thing in the gas station? And the hot dogs, which feel like a prize because they don't always have them. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. It's stupid. I can make many jokes about both hot dogs and the circumstances. Like, this place really does have a freestanding Cinnabon kiosk, and it's the kind of place where you could like take a shower and buy a gun. They have guns for sale. And it's kind of, it's probably like the antithesis of something you'd think that I would be into. And so all those things, I was like, that'll be funny and stupid. And I think I achieved both of those things.
And this kind of coincides with the live lit conversation we were having on Tuesday, but while you were writing it, were you thinking about the fact that you'd be reading it aloud, or did you sort of just write it?
Well, I wrote a draft and then read through it, and like all those little details, like the congealed barbecue goo and the names of the cashiers and stuff like that, I added those. Like, I really like to get into the most minute details of the thing. Like, that's my particular like writing kink. So I went through it a couple of times, read it aloud to make sure that I could like say it and it sounded right. And then I added details like, you know, parking next to a Bigfoot. I had to look up like what those trucks are called and, you know, stuff like that. And so I add in those little details that make it both richer and more descriptive, but also make it more interesting for me. And they kind of create the scene a little better. And then that was it. Like I went over it a couple of times, read it out loud, and then I was done. Then I sent it to you.
I would like to emphasize a couple of things for people who are newer to writing and reading their stuff aloud. One is something Sam just said, which is a gold mine for everybody, which is this. It can be simultaneously really stupid and something that you're totally passionate about, right? If you hit upon something stupid and dismiss it because, well, that's just dumb, the opposite is true. If you like really do a deep dive into the stupid, if you embrace the stupid as fully and as like with as open arms as you can, you will always find good stuff. And then the other thing is, in terms of process, what Sam was just talking about is really valuable in that your first pass is just get down the architecture and the skeleton of the thing, right? And it's going to be featureless. It's going to be basically like lacking any kind of like texture or taste or feel. And then you think back through and drop in the telling things, the congealed goo and the, you know, the ground chicken lips, etc. Right?
I knew you would like that.
Very, very much, very much. It felt like a kiss from Indiana. But so those are just two like super practical things to keep in mind as you are tackling this kind of stuff yourself.
Awesome, thank you, Ian. And to stay on you, Ian, we're going to, John's gonna put this slide up that is about like the feedback protocol that we follow often in our education programs, which granted are usually happening with younger participants, but it's an adapted critical response process, just meaning a version of how you can constructively critique each other's work. And Steppenwolf Education is drawn to this one specifically because there is a portion that I cut out where you can like give your opinion about somebody's work. But something I really love, Ian, that you said on Tuesday's call was sometimes when people are giving feedback to each other, it becomes more about what they would write versus really seeking the intention of what the writer is trying to put out there and helping them uncover that and bring that to the surface. And that is kind of what this process is a little bit aimed at doing, especially when you're a beginner and you don't have a lot of good feedback to go off of, because sometimes in school it just becomes about like, it was good, it was bad, and you're not getting like that real constructive way of thinking through things, and that's something that we want to model. And so I'm hoping that with Sam's piece, you'll kind of walk us through this a little bit. And Sam, your step two, the thing I like about this process is it's actually a little bit more about the artists themselves kind of wanting to uncover something new about their work. But yeah, so let's just give this a try. Step one is this statements of meaning, meaning that like you just start with like some of the things that are really like resonating with you and staying with you, which I think you already started to talk about from Sam's piece.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always love about Sam's work is the level of attention paid to even the most seemingly insignificant detail is thrilling. And it may sound weird to talk about having experienced a thrill when you're considering the grim sort of death march of hot dogs rotating on the curling iron, right? But because you lend such credence to the smallest thing, it becomes something worth attention. It becomes something worth, like, usually you go into a convenience store and it's the most anonymized sort of fluorescent soaked place, and they're all indistinguishable, right? But when, like, I don't know why, but the phrase freestanding Cinnabon kiosk really had, to me, both kind of like a, well, yes, obviously I can picture the thing, but also this kind of metaphorical resonance of, like, is it possible to be free in a Cinnabon? And the answer that I come to is no. I loved so if the essence of the assignment or the challenge was specificity, right away we are met. You've met that goal by, like, it could have been any truck stop, right? It could have been any truck stop, even along an Indiana interstate, but it was this particular one in Lake Station, right? And so even if it's not factual, that doesn't matter to me. Like, the fact that you have conjured it with such precision places me there and places me in sort of your experience of it, right? The grunting racism at you is a great example of both being highly particular and permitting me, the listener, to sort of fill in some blanks and play along with you. Whatever you call those rolling curling iron things. And then here's a perfect example to me of, like, this is what made it a live lit piece, was the line, because it's Indiana, for God's sake, right? So by this point in this, we have encountered your voice about this particular set of hot dogs in this particular place, right? And so we can infer a lot about what you mean by Indiana, right? If Mike Pence speaks the word Indiana, it's going to have, stupid resonances. But when you speak it, it's very clearly like a skeptical outsider's contempt or disdain for the place, right? And then the hot juice from ground chicken lips was just restaurant quality, my friend.
Thank you. That was for you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it.
Which, okay, can I just say, not to toot my own butt, but a thing that I do often, and a thing that helps me, especially in a piece that's going to be performed, but even if it's going to be published, is if you write it to a person or with a person in mind, I find that, and maybe it's because I have more of a conversational style that this helps me, but if I can imagine one person listening to it, or in my mind, I'm always like, I got to make this person laugh or this person, feel whatever, then I feel like that helps me get out what I want to say if I can envision who I am saying it to. So, like, for this thing, I was like, well, I'm going to read it to Ian, and I know what to do. So, like, ground chicken lips and hot juice, I know that's going to get him. And not everybody has a person like that, but we all have someone, right? You all have a friend that you can be like, okay, I'm going to write this so that to make Joe laugh, and then other people than Joe will laugh. But, like, if you keep a person in mind, I find, especially with performance pieces, that it helps it come out. That wasn't very articulate, but hopefully you guys
No. That was great. And I also, so let me ask you this. In addition to having a person, hey buddy, one of the dogs just saying hi.
Oh.
I'm not gonna take the bait. I'm not gonna rise to the bait, cat person, okay? It's not gonna happen today. In addition to having sort of a person in mind that you are trying to reach or make laugh or elicit some response from, like another thing for me is I am so pre-bored by everything, generally, as a sort of, you know, mission statement, but also in particular, anything that I have to say or observe about anything is just, ugh, it's just makes me want to heave, right? And so if I can have somebody in mind and read back over something and be like, yeah, that line wasn't bad, that was okay, right? I feel like that's an added sort of filter for, okay, we may be getting somewhere. If I can make Joe laugh and I'm like not entirely sickened by all of it, then maybe this is something, right? Do you have a similar, like, you know, I mean, it's the old thing of like a comedian laughing at their own jokes is the worst, but do you seek your own amusement? Do you seek your own sort of like, okay, that was good. That one was good.
Yeah. Oh, I am always trying to make myself laugh first, always. And especially, I mean, in performance pieces, but also if I know I'm gonna read a thing from a book, I have to not like wanna die reading it. And so it has to be funny and entertaining to me. I mean, honestly, that with this specific thing, I'm like, you know, I'm going to spend 10 minutes talking about it. I don't want to spend 10 minutes talking about like the lady at the farmer's market or whatever. I'm going to talk about like greasy hot dogs. Anything that I write about is something that like fascinates or delights me, because you spend so much time with the work. I mean, it's like being around people. Like I have no people in my life that I don't enjoy being around, because you're stuck with them. And like, depending on how long it takes you to work on a piece, you're stuck with it. I don't write anything that isn't amusing to me. I mean, even I don't like learn to love things. I either go into it being into it, or I just don't write it. So yeah, I am always, and anyone who's seen me perform for real, this is weird because I feed off the crowd a lot and I feed off like the laughter from people, but I spend the entire time laughing at my own fucking jokes. I mean, I'm a terrible person. I like laugh at my text messages. Like if I send somebody a text that's funny, I'm like, man, I'm fucking hilarious. So all of my writing is the same way, where I am just trying to put words together in a way that is amusing to me and that I also think will amuse the audience.
So let me ask you this. When you write about something so small in scale as this, right? What are you hoping your listener or your reader is gonna take away from that? Like what is that supposed to sort of spark in them?
I mean, I think one of the things, okay, I'm gonna say a good thing and a bad thing. So the one thing is I always hope that there's someone who feels similarly, who connects to it in some way. And maybe not the hot dog specifically, but I'm very into shame and the idea of feeling shame and connecting with other people who also feel shame. Like that's why, I mean, an element I use throughout my work is to talk about shame And even in this little thing, the crying alone in the car, that's not like happy tears of joy crying over a corn dog. That's like you shoveling a meat stick into your mouth while being really sad as like, you know, MAGA trolls like swarm your car. The first is always like connection, for someone to be like, okay, I have that weird thing too, where I like drive 2 hours away to eat a pizza pocket in my car, or whatever the shame thing is, right? So that's always number one. And then number two, I do enjoy, and it's a theme throughout all of my writing, horrifying people a little bit. And I know that there are people horrified by the eating of food, by the eating of bad food, by the eating of greasy food, by the shame eating of food alone in the car. And a lot of, I really do like to kind of pick at that, like, you know, what horrifies a normal, sensible person. And so I think in this piece specifically, like, it's, you know, you're eating at a gas station and kind of like, you know, delighting in it. And I think that's a thing that like horrifies a lot of people. So yeah, I want some connection with people who get it, and to maybe like titillate and horrify the people who can't directly relate.
I really appreciate all of this, because I think it's sometimes hard to ask people about their writing process, but it's really helpful to hear like all these different ways you're coming at it, and some of the just like values, I don't know if that's a weird word to put on it, but that are important to you to embed in your own work. Ian, I have a question for you, something that me and my team are wondering right now. How would you feel if we had a participant share and then came back to your piece in a little bit? And so, you know, we only modeled the first step, which I think led to some really awesome, deep discussion. I'm just gonna quickly talk about, because what's gonna happen is I'm gonna have somebody come off mute, they're gonna share their piece. Somebody in the Q&A asked how long it should be. And in the challenge, we said, please don't go over 2 minutes. And so that's something that we're hoping that you can kind of keep yourselves accountable to. And then Sam and Ian are going to kind of quickly move through these steps. So like they'll start with like just the maybe 2 or 3 things each that they like heard or that's sticking out to them. We'll let the artist pose a question to Sam and Ian that's kind of about their work and the intention of their work, and is that being communicated, or it should be really focused on your piece and developing that. And then we can do the third step if we want. It's sort of the neutral wondering step is about helping somebody think more deeply about the artistic choices they're making. And so it should come from a real place of curiosity rather than judgment, like I want to write it that way. But instead, I think our hope is that like, I'm genuinely curious, like how did you, and I think we've uncovered a lot of that actually in identifying how Sam has made choices in their work, but we'll see how it goes. So does that sound okay to the two of you?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to come over here and see who has, and you don't know what that means, but who has their hand raised to share. And you know what? I'm going to, hey, Greg, this is Amanda, and I'm wondering if you can come off mute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, Greg Geoffroy, he's a Steppenwolf teaching artist who's helped us pilot some of these virtual programs. It's nice to see you in here.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're excited to see what you created for the Maker Challenge. And so One thing I wanted to ask before we have you read, I told everybody just now that you're a Steppenwolf teaching artist, but would you mind saying your name, if you want, your pronouns, and just like where are you right now in the world?
Yes, my name is Greg Giffroy, he, him, his pronouns, and I am currently sheltered in place in Chicago.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I'm excited to hear your piece. So we're ready when you are.
All right. Thank you so much, by the way, Ian and Sam, for this. Whew. All right. It's called Smiles Wanted. Teeth planted into our dreams blossom into nightmares. The waking world's anxieties traipsing through REM at 3 a.m. that always seems to be its hour. Toward relationship aside, I have come to appreciate the collection of 32 strategically guarding alveolar ridge, but are defenseless against anything sour gummy related. After being imprisoned behind braces for a year, for incarceration carried the historical weight of converted slavery in my understanding, my teeth sat perfectly behind lips that my face finally grew into. The precariously, then preciously placed pearls protecting me from police profiling are now idly perched behind protection adorned across the bottom half of my face. My key to disarming strangers who see history before human is no longer publicly visible in the name of shelter in place. No longer able to smoothen shoulders and plant butterfly seeds in the pits of stomachs of men and women alike. You ever watch a lifetime of strife wash away from someone's face, leaving behind only unapologetic wrinkles? The irony that the hardest substance in the human body elicits the softest response that only sand patiently rubbed against the surface of rock over time can fully articulate. I'd prefer to reside in the chasm of someone's cheek for a second than run through their minds all day. Brace-faced chants that calcify the spirit yet seeps into the skin are no match for exposed enamel shifting back into original position due to retainer neglect. Teeth and smile alike have been relegated to only parting to break down sustenance which has been rationed or delivered, and build upon the ever-thickening layer of stomach I have been growing since November but began to fully acknowledge mid-March. Like fossils extracted from the caverns of my gums, I am lacking in wisdom, but alas, my eyebrows will have to carry the burden of expression while my smile remains quarantined. My cloudy lips will once again part as I reignite my competition with the sun, but for now, gleaming teeth are only reserved for glow box reunions through microfibers, a realm where I hope that smiles are the only contagion being spread. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Greg. As we kind of get into the feedback section, if it's possible for you, I was asked, and you don't have to do this either, if you would drop your text in the chat. If that's something that you're interested in, go for it. But Sam and Ian, do you want us to put that slide back up? Would that be helpful?
The feedback slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Great. So Greg, thank you so much. And attendees, I want to encourage you to follow along this feedback process with us. So in the chat, if you want to kind of do each step as we go through them, please go for it.
Yes, you said, Amanda, you want me to drop this into the chat, the text?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Awesome. So Sam and Ian, do you want to start with step one, a couple statements of meaning from each of you?
Sam, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that it really resonated with me as a person who grew up poor and still has poor person teeth. It was like visceral for me to listen to a person talk about how you are judged and how it can change your life. The history before, did he say history before humanity? That line was really powerful to me. It was incredible.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. Ian, do you want to do a few?
The line that just slayed me was, I don't know if I'm getting it right, but I jotted it down as you were speaking, was, did you ever watch a lifetime of strife wash away from somebody's face? It just, it combined this sort of like metaphorical and physical interplay of, you know, because obviously you're not going to see something that long in scale happen in an instant, but it did sort of speak to this accretion of history that people have and how you can sort of witness moments of transformation in them. And it also was this lovely, tactically, it seemed like this lovely individual person as a stand-in for a much broader community. Like Sam was saying, like I grew up poor too, and so like all things poverty to me are familiar, and there's a comfort shame to them. You know what I mean? Like it's really known, but it's also, as Sam was saying, like a thing that you feel judged for, even if nobody's around, just because you know that like this is not right. We're not supposed to be this way. We're supposed to be like prosperous and thrilled all the time. So that line in particular, just as a point of coalescing a lot of the threads that had been woven in prior, was a really sort of resonant landing point for me.
That hardest substance, softest response line, Jesus Christ, that's good. You should be teaching this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Turn his video on, and I'm gonna go pet the dogs or something, because I have nothing.
Hey, Greg, before we move on to another person, do you have like the step 2 artist as questioner, like any question you wanted to pose about this work?
Yes, I will admit I am somebody who writes. This is not a form that I've ever written in specifically. I primarily do spoken word poetry, but I am interested in your thoughts about wandering. I find that this tends to lean allow space for the writer to kind of wander into a space for a little bit before getting back on track. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on ways to do that effectively, without obviously completely boring the captive audience that you have in front of you.
I have a good answer for this, I think. My style of writing is in most of my kind of storytelling pieces, I take a very circuitous route from the beginning to the end. I like to start off talking about a thing, then talk about several other things, and then kind of get back to the point and go away and get back to the point. And one of the things that I do, especially in writing a piece like that, is to know how it ends. I typically write toward an ending. I never start something without knowing where it ends. And so to use your word, wandering, if you are going to, I would say to have an ending and know how long you need to take to get there, and then kind of let that dictate kind of how far off the path of the story you wander. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I would just like to offer a couple observations. One is that this was clearly a reading by somebody who has experience doing this, right? Because you, part of a lot of the struggle for people who are new to this kind of stuff is overcoming their own insecurity about, this is a thing that I wrote, and therefore, you know, being the sort of hateful gargoyle that we all think ourselves to be, it's not worth your time and attention, right? And so people will either fall too quiet or rush through, or, you know, there's a lot of ways that they have tells for that insecurity. And so I just want to commend you, and also have other people take note of, you really, in your pacing and in the respect you gave to your own language, helped us as the listener to navigate really complex, poetic, metaphorical arabesques, right? Which on the page are more easily navigated, right? Because we can sort of go at our own pace, pause where we need to, see, did I really understand that? Do I need to reread that line, etc., right? Or if you were reading it and we had the text up in front of us and could follow along. So you offered us a lot of great help in gaining the full access to what it was that you were saying. And then the other thing is about wandering. I feel like there is, as Sam suggests, there is great opportunity to do that, but it is, you have to have a sense of proportion, right? You have to have a sense of like, if I was a listener to this for the first time, where would my sort of threshold of patience be, right? Because the being an audience for anything is a sort of granting of trust to the person that you're listening to, right? And I think in Sam's case, you never get the sense of like, she has no idea where she's headed with this, right? You always have the sense, even if it's really circuitous, as you said, of this is a person who is in command of their material and knows where it's headed, even if I don't, right? So that permits you to be surprised, but also not anxious that like, where is this headed, right? And I likewise got the sense from you that even though it was really rich and complicated, that you were sort of a trustworthy guide through that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much. Thank you both.
And thank you, Greg. This
Thank you.
John just tagging in. Amanda's having some computer issues, but can guide us to the next thing. So thank you again, Greg. We're going to go to one more participant's writing, and then we'll do Ian's as well. I believe we were going to go with, I think it's Shay Hatter. I believe you can unmute yourself now.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Did I get your name correct?
Yes, it's Shay.
Awesome. Wonderful. Hi, Shay. So we would love to hear your piece then, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. My piece is about a little corner store market that we have downstairs from where I live, which has totally changed now that we are in post-quarantine life. So I will go ahead and start it. It's called Pre-Quarantine Royal Blue. A once thriving and vibrant refuge from my downtown apartment, a quaint little oasis that I could escape to, write, think, and overall get away from the mundane work from home existence I had already been living the past 5 years. The royal blue was everything you would expect from a downtown, yuppie-infused, bourgeoisie, hipster urban market. It was overpriced, convenient, and practically practical, quirky and cozy, all in one. You could get just about anything from the royal blue. A bottle of high-end champagne, a charcuterie board to go, fresh vegetables, or a bouquet of fresh spring flowers. My little oasis. I would go down about 3 days a week. It was just steps from my high-rise apartment. Whenever I wanted to get out of the house or just have a getaway without going too far, I could always count on the royal blue. I would often go to sit with my laptop and muse at the world as it went by. That world, of course, could be anything from a 2020 Lamborghini SUV driving obliviously by, lavishing the downtown streets with its sublime decadence, to a mentally ill homeless man yelling obscenities into space while threatening to take a crap in the middle of the street. Ah, the royal blue offered it all. Typically, upon entering, the barista, AKA the cashier, AKA the panini maker, AKA Fernando, knew exactly what size green tea chai latte I wanted, and to me, that meant something. The fact that he would add a sly smile and a lingering look, well, that meant something too. But that's another story for another day. Going to the royal blue added a layer of belonging to a community many lived in, but yet you never really got to see, in large part due to most of the community being tucked away in our well-appointed apartments, only ever truly getting to know your immediate neighbors or the concierge. You always knew you could just go down to the royal blue and see it all. You could sit, meet, mingle, relax, or just be alone in public until the day came that you couldn't. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, John, for jumping in. Yeah, Salmonine, is it helpful if we put that slide back up? The feedback one? Well, we'll do it anyway. Yeah, thank you so much. Do you want to, who wants to kick us off with step one?
I'll start and say that the imagery is really great. Don't interrupt me, Ian. Oh no, did I disappear?
No,
Can
you're
you hear
here.
me?
I think Ian disappeared for a moment.
Oh,
I can
okay.
hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh,
Hello.
okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes, now I can. The imagery and the descriptions were so good. Like, I feel like when you were describing the hipster market, I can see it. And I also really loved Fernando's many jobs. All of the AKAs were great. And I think they said a thing without saying a thing, which is always my favorite kind of thing in writing. It was really great.
Thank you.
I also was grateful for Fernando's appearance, because I actually was like getting a little worried that there were no people in this place. It seemed so location based and specific to the store and the various ways that the author was interacting with and understanding the store. And then when he showed up, it sort of humanized everything retroactively. So I was happy to see him, and that sense of like, if there was a thesis to this, which, you know, that we're not doing persuasive essays, so everyone, nobody panic. That idea of just being alone in public, right? Especially if you're as I am, a person who mostly works in solitude. That sort of proximity has value, right? Even though I'm not sort of sitting with you and catching up with you. It's the fact that you're nearby sort of adds a different sort of color to my experience of things, right? I was fascinated by the nature of the threat to take a crap in the middle of the street. Was it a verbal? Was it a sort of hitching down pants? What was it? Because I was dying to know.
Yeah, that was my favorite part too.
Yeah, that's downtown life here in Dallas, Texas.
Do you have a question that you want to pose to Sam and Ian?
Yeah.
About your piece?
Absolutely. So, I am a new writer. I'm a novice writer. I've never published anything or even done any public writing or submitted any writing, and I'm looking to get into that. So, what critiques would you just have for me as a new writer?
Of this piece, or you want advice in general?
Yeah, just in general.
I mean, my biggest piece of advice is not sexy, right? But it's to always have a different job, if you can, that actually pays, because it takes the pressure off of your writing. I feel like when you are just starting, you have to have as low expectations as, I mean, your expectations have to be incredibly low. And so I think if you put all your eggs in the writing basket and you want it to pay you, and you also want it to be fulfilling, those things aren't going to happen. And this is also, I mean, this is real advice, and it's not nice, but you have to just be prepared to give your writing away as much as possible. I am, by all measure, conventional measures, very successful, and I give my writing away every day. Like, I still write on the internet for free a lot. So I would say keep your expectations low so that it's still fun for you and you don't feel pressure doing it, and be prepared to give it away to build an audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes to all
I'm
that.
so sorry. I don't have advice.
I think, do you have anything you want to quickly add, Ian, before we move on to the next person?
Yeah, my only thing is setting aside practical logistical considerations is take note of what is interesting to you. Take note of what is puzzling and holds your interest, right? So, like, for example, Sam was talking earlier about how the subject of shame and how it manifests in all of our lives is of ongoing interest to her, right? And I'm not saying that, like, it has to be that clearly articulated, but if you want to write stuff that's going to be good and that's going to be of interest to you, then, because that's going to be the main thing first, is really know your own mind and really know your own heart and really sort of pay heed to what matters to you, and pursue that with vigor, right? Go after that to the exclusion of stuff that may feel like more, marketable or, relatable or whatever. Because if you stick close to what you care about, then you're going to make the best stuff, and that's what will, that's what will attract notice, I think.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
you're
sharing.
welcome.
I I think we have time for one more person to come off mute and chat. It's hard because there's like 55 people with their hands raised. So of course, I'd love to have
Oh,
more time today,
no.
but
We should do this again. I mean, we're not doing anything.
but I'm going to put allowed to talk Kanika. You should be able to come off mute right now. Do you see that ability?
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. And so do you want to just tell us your name, if you want pronouns, and where you're at?
I am, my name is Kanika Sego, and I am here in Chicago, and I am not far from the University of Chicago, and I'm about south of here. So I'm in Woodlawn, neighborhood called Woodlawn here in Chicago. And I don't need any he, she, you know, I'm Kanika, and I'm a woman, of course. So I don't need any pronouns. I'm fine. My name is Kanika. And
Awesome, Kanika. So do you want to share your piece with us?
yes, I'm gonna just do a piece. It's very brief, and it's called Going to the Gym. And that's the name of the piece. Was it physical stamina, or was it accomplishment? I've had the challenging experience of going to a gym and working out for those things. When I was younger, I never took ways of improvement for granted, as my parents had mentored me. As I got older, I ventured on my own to find more increased ways to improve me. I knew it would be helpful. Our journey for me and ourselves is a unique set of issues. Going to a gym and fitting in helped me to lessen certain challenges. At this time, a part of me decreased. I actually liked the gym and some of the people. The surroundings were not that bad, and it helped. I had a good understanding of staying healthy. Well, I found myself communing with nature again. I am outdoors and not featured in any lockdown. Outdoors for fitness. Outdoors in the park for right now, for a continued, perhaps revisited experience that will offer renewal and other support. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you so much. And I forgot to say this for the last piece, but if the last presenter and if you, Kanika, want to throw your piece in the chat, just so people can look at it, that'd be great. Sam and Ian, I also wanted to invite you, if you wanted to do, you can do step one where you notice things. If you wanted to pose a question to Kanika, you could do that, whatever feels useful to you.
Well, I want to ask, do you actually miss going to the gym?
Yeah, I really miss going to the gym. Really miss it. It's just weird environmentally, because I've used the lake, and I've used for years. I'm 46 years old, so I've used the lake. I've taken my daughter outdoors, and I've ran with her outdoors and used nature. But I really miss the gym. It wasn't all that bad. I mean, it was indoors, but it's such a part of me, such a part of way of life. So this lockdown situation, this way of this quarantine has taken simple things from people, simple values, like you go to the gas station. You know, you have to get gas, not more than 10 people in the place where, you know, you pay your money. You have to wait in line now just to go in a grocery store. When you get your oil change, you got to have your face mask on, or they probably perhaps won't wait on you. So in terms of the gym situation, the gym environment, they're not going to open until stuff is the way that it needs to be. So I really missed it. You know, I missed the machines. You know, I missed certain people there. It wasn't so bad. You know, it was, you know, I wish that I could have stayed longer, you know, and did more time there. But, you know, I know it's, you know, maybe something that's not important, you know, to people.
So those are all things I would add. If you were going to develop this, those were all things that I would add, like the machines that you missed, or maybe a specific machine that you missed, because toward the end, I was like, well, I can't tell if she's happy being in nature now, or if like she really misses the gym. So I would add maybe all of those details to really drive home the point that you like, that's a place that you miss going.
Yeah, I like nature. I guess there's a balance, because I like having just actually, that's a backup plan, I,
For sure.
I use the outdoors, but I guess the issue is, it rains. I don't like running in the rain or walking in the rain, so the weather plays a factor in that. When it starts, one day I was out there and it was lightning, and I had to, you have these God moments where maybe I need to come, I'm Black, I need to come from out here. Just lightning, and I'm, trying to, do some fitness, and I'm more taboo. You need to get back in the car and go home now, So maybe you have to, it's different. It's just more spiritual how you have to plan your time, because it's a lot of rain that happens in April. It's a lot of rain, rainy. It was rainy past 3-4 weeks ago. So, it's, I miss the gym. I miss it. And, but yeah, nature is a good backup. It's right for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kanika, thank you so much. It's been really fun. I don't know if Ian, there's just like one more quick comment you want to make before we move on.
But my only thing about making this a piece that's specific to now is the contrast in your experience of the gym versus being out in nature, right? Is what were you doing at the gym, or what feelings did it grant you, or what, like being free from weather, etc. Like, what was it about that is preferable to being out by the lake, etc. And how exactly do they feel different in your experience? That would be my main request.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam and Ian. I think now would be a good time. Ian, I definitely want to hear your piece. And so if you still feel good sharing it, we have it on a slide that John can put up. And then we'll kind of just move into a little bit of conversation since things wrap up around 6. But yeah, I'm excited to hear your piece.
Okay. It's these brief, jokey exchanges I'll have with the barista, say, or the kid at the sandwich place register. I don't mean small talk. I cannot stand that stuff. It is little, this talk, just a couple lines, but it is not small in the sense that it's of no consequence. And I'm not talking about flirting. I love to flirt, but this isn't that. This can have overtones of the flirtatious, but that's not the basis. These little exchanges, to me anyhow, since I honestly have no idea how they're experienced on the other side, are my best attempt at, I don't know, subverting the weird imbalance that's supposed to be between customer and worker person that I've always found kind of gross and sad making. I joke with the person behind the apron, the person behind the apron and the name tag, or try to if their workplace defenses are not so ingrained that they're beyond reach. I try to summon some flicker of their actual personhood for just a second, to break up their shift, to let them know I don't give two shits about the apron and the name tag that their 17 levels of corporate overlord insist they embody for the world at all times. That I have been where they are, in some service job you don't want, dealing with 6 or 8 hours of with a throng of fucking Karens who are peeved and aggrieved about every trivial thing and will remain discontented no matter what you do. For the few seconds you're dealing with me, I want you not to have to bite your fucking tongue till your mouth fills with your own blood. It's meant to be a commiserating little interval. When it works, a stranger and I can share a couple seconds of, none of this is really real, and it's all super weird. And it's not for them. I'm not some kind of Johnny Appleseed scattering good vibes wherever I go. It's for me. I need these little reminders that shit does not need to be this way.
Thanks so much, Ian. Similar to the questions I asked Sam, I'm curious just like quickly about your process of writing this. So similarly, did you find yourself following the steps in the challenge? Like what were the things you were thinking about? Yeah.
Yeah, so I try to really focus in on something about being out in public, in the former model of being out in public, right? Because now when I'm outside walking the dogs or whatever, I'm constantly policing the conduct of other people, right? Do they have a mask? Are they far enough away? Am I gonna have to avoid you and cross the street, etc.? So it's much more about the sort of containment protocols of being outside now, right? And so I was trying to think of a thing, because I'm so hermetic and misanthropic, I have mostly no use for the overwhelming majority of people, but there are little glimmers that I really enjoy of being out in the world. And so I tried to think of like, what is one that's particular to me, right? The thing that slayed me that Sam said earlier was like, I don't want it to be about the sound of my sister's laugh or whatever. I want it to be a little like true thing that may go unnoticed by them, right? Because it's, and that was the other thing, was that part of the thing that I try and impart to the writing workshops that, that I teach is that when you are observing your own experience, you need to both tend to the sensory reality so that I can feel like I'm at the Flying J in Fort Station, Indiana, or whatever it is. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is you need to, or I want you to give me a sort of VIP pass to your mind and how it works and how it operates and what's going on in there, right? Because part of why I read other people's own experience is their mind is very different than my own. Their priorities, their hopes may not have any resemblance to my own. And to me, that's one of the things that's thrilling about, you know, learning someone deeply is, oh my God, there's like a whole other way of being that I have no access to unless you sort of permit me.
Sam, I'm not going to throw the feedback protocol or anything up there, but I didn't know if you wanted to be in conversation about Ian's work a little bit.
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things that strikes me, especially in the evolution of Ian's work, is when sometimes he writes from like an omnipotent kind of angry, godlike place, but I do love when he brings it down to earth and like writes these kind of nice things that give you a peek into the kind of like soft and squishy interior. Also, I think we have been sort of deluged by articles over the last few years, you know, like all of these articles that want to like demystify workers and whatever. And I do love that this is written from the perspective of someone who deals with a person behind a counter and treats them like an actual human being, and also misses that. I think lately we hear a lot about people who like want their haircut or want to, you know, buy clothes in the store or whatever, but you don't hear people saying, you know, I've kind of built a relationship with the Starbucks guy, just like, you know, not even a real relationship, but like watching his beard grow or, you know, seeing his tattoos progress or whatever it is. And I think I really love that angle. Also, 17 levels of Overlord was really great. It's a great line. It's very good. Good job.
I'm A+, Ian. I'm curious from both of you as we start to wind down today. A couple of the questions I was seeing in the Q&A and in the chat, and also that we got from one of our readers, was this idea of like how maybe to keep developing this work. And I'm curious for maybe speaking from like how you would imagine doing that also for yourselves. If you have a piece and you're really interested in it, like, would you keep right now sort of tinkering with it? Do you sort of let it lie for a while and come back and revisit it and see if it fits into a larger project? Like, how do you continue to develop a thing once, you know, you kind of find that spark in it?
Well, I mean, I don't write anything unless it has a beginning, middle, and an end. Like, that's it. If I'm gonna write a piece, then I already know what it is. But if I took this and was like, what can I do with this hot dog thing? I mean, the thing for me, I would probably make a series of these kind of paragraphs and string them together into one thing and call it like, you know, all the shit I missed during quarantine. But I don't know that I could write like 2,000. Well, I probably could do 2,000 words on the Flying J, but that might be boring. So then I would, if I were gonna develop this into something, which maybe I will, I gotta sell another book. It would be like a series of these like little things I miss from the outside, but like down to the, like dissecting them down to a cellular level, which is what I like to do. Ian, what would you do?
Well, so I agree with you that it's thematically it's easy to sort of like cluster stuff together, right? Like I wish that I could, you know, get my dry cleaning and do all the little errandy things that I used to do every Saturday or whatever. And that's not going to make for anything of particular interest. I think the thing that separates an essay, right, which is very much, I think, what you do, versus just personal narrative, right? Which is memoir, like things happened in this sequence involving these people, et cetera, right? Is that there is some subject of concern. There's some idea at the core that you're using the hot dogs on the roller thing as a vehicle to explore, right? So if it's about the sort of shame crying in the car, right, as the sort of undergirding of the whole thing, right, then there's infinite ways. There's infinite ways of exploring that, right? And that's going to be interesting. That's going to be sort of like cool and compelling and like and peculiar enough to be to make us want to sort of follow along, right? And so if you anyone who presented today or anyone who like did this little challenge and wants to expand it into something, there's no end of little nano experiences like this that you could paste together. But there's also like you can do research on, if this convenience store is like of particular interest and value to you, you can like tell us the story of how that came to be a retail site and how the family that owns it came to, you know what I mean? Like, so you can blow the context out from just your own narrow experience and into something broader, which will help with getting bored about yourself, which is always a peril, but also like intimate the connectedness of experience and people and so forth.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Sam. I feel like everything went by so quickly today. I'm so glad that we got 3 people in to share. I wish it could have been more, but I really loved hearing all the pieces from the 2 of you, and I tried to do the Maker Challenge. I need to go back and revisit it. I wasn't like interested enough in what I was writing and sort of kept kind of like revising the brainstorming list. And so I didn't quite get past that phase, but I was excited to keep returning to it. Thank you so much again for your time these past 2 days and for helping us kick off Maker May. It's an experiment, and we were lucky to have the 2 of you be experimenting alongside of us and all the participants that have shown up, whether here or on Facebook Live on Tuesday.